This episode of The Minimalists is brought to you by nobody, because advertisements suck.
The Minimalists.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to The Minimalist Podcast, where we discuss what it means to live a meaningful life with less. My name is Joshua Fields Milburn.
And I'm Ryan Nicodemus, and together we are The Minimalists.
Today, we're going to talk about owning less. We're going to talk about wanting less. We're going to talk about decluttering physical and digital spaces. We're going to talk about more about less. Got a lot to talk about today. A lot of questions to answer. And we're here with Ronald L. Banks. Ron, thanks for joining us.
Wow, thank you. Thanks for having me. This is exciting.
It's great to have you, man.
First time in LA, so
This is your first time in LA?
First time here.
Oh.
First time here.
Even though it's during the pandemic, some of like our favorite restaurants are still open.
I wrote down 4 for him.
Yeah. Oh, how long are you
Yeah.
guys in town?
Tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have this afternoon to explore.
All right.
and
You got at
see.
least 2 meals.
You have at least 5,000 calories today
Right,
over
exactly.
these 4 restaurants that I'm going to
Oh, wow.
recommend.
Perfect.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Ron, I really like your YouTube channel. That's why you're here today.
Thank you.
You do a
Thank
great
you.
job with your videos. We'll be talking more about your videos. I do want to encourage folks to check it out. We'll put a link to your channel in the show notes, or you can just go to YouTube, type in Ronald L. Banks. You'll find all of his minimalism videos there, also some poetry videos, which we can talk about. In fact, I want to talk specifically about some of your videos. I want to go into detail on some of those. We'll get to those, but this is a listener-driven show, so I figured we'd start out with some questions. Our first question is from Chris in Fort Collins, Colorado.
I have a 2-part question. One is, what criteria do you use to make any purchases? And the second question is, what is your opinion on upgrading things that you currently own to, something that you think would make you happier or something like that?
Now, Ron, I want to get your thoughts on this, but here are some things. I'll just set it up like this because I have some definitive answers for this. Quite often, people will call in and they'll ask a rather esoteric question, and we have to try to work through it. But we've already written about this quite a bit. But here's the simple answer for the first part of Chris's question. How do you decide? How do you be more intentional with your purchases? There are 5 questions that Ryan and I ask before we buy something. And I'll go through those questions real quick. It's can I afford to part with this money? And so I think, can I afford the thing, right? It is a question. Obviously, if I have to put it on a credit card, I can't afford the thing. If I have to finance it, I can't afford the thing. And I know some people will be like, well, what about a car? Okay, if you have to, by definition, if you have to finance something, you can't afford it. Because if you could afford it, you would just
Pay cash.
Right, you would buy the thing, right? So that's the first question. The second question is, can I pay the actual cost? Remember that the true cost of a thing is well beyond the price tag. So storing the thing, cleaning the thing, changing the batteries or the oil in the thing, putting gas in the thing, the electricity for the thing, the space that it takes up in your mind. All of these things are additional costs that we don't think about because we see the item we want to buy and it's like, oh, it's $50. But it's not $50. It's so much more than that because you have to worry about it. There's the psychological cost. There are all these other costs. Will it add value to my life is the next question. And really, when we say will it add value, will it serve a purpose or bring me joy? Now, you can justify anything. So you can pretend something's really going to serve a purpose or bring you joy, but you have to be honest with yourself with some of these things because otherwise we'll just let anything in, right? The fourth question is, what are the alternatives? And I think sometimes we don't even think about that. What else can I do with this money, right? So if I'm going to spend $100 on a shirt, is that the best use of this money? And then finally, can I get by without it for a while? I think it's one of the messages of minimalism here is if you didn't need it 5 minutes ago, maybe you don't need it now. And so maybe I'll just wait a little bit. And we have a rule called the 30-30 rule. If it costs more than $30, maybe I'll wait 30 hours. Just try to put some time between myself and the purchase, so I'm not making the impulse purchase. So Chris, if you want, we have a wallpaper for your phone, so you can have all 5 of those questions right there on your phone. Anytime you go to make a purchase, you're standing in line somewhere. It's free over at theminimalists.com/wallpapers. But I do want to talk about this idea of upgrading with you, Ron. And so, because I know you've talked about this in the past, but what are your thoughts on upgrades?
Oh, it's a good question. Personally, I don't upgrade much of anything. I'm still rocking the iPhone 6. So if you ask most of the iPhone fans, I'm well behind the 8 ball on that one. But I think when it comes to upgrades or purchasing in general, I try to look at it from a perspective of who am I buying this for? Am I buying it for me or the other people? So a big thing for me of why I started this journey was kind of get away from the idea of comparison and doing things for other people. I talked about in my content how I had this persona that I let go of, this Mr. Smooth persona that was given to me in high school, and that came with a lot of additions of physical clutter, the mental clutter, emotional clutter, things that I would just hold on to because one, I didn't know how to let it go, but two, just trying to uphold this vision or this standard of other people had for me. So for me, the question is, who am I buying this thing for? So am I buying it for me, or am I buying it for those that think I need to have it or those that also have it?
Isn't it funny, though, because we do that to impress other people, but usually they don't even care.
They don't.
We just think they do, right?
They don't. And that's the irony of it all, is because we look for validation out of our friendships, our relationships, but then most times those friendship relationships aren't genuine. They're just based on the things we own. So if you don't have those things, you don't have those relationships. So I think you need to build those first and allow what you need in your life to be what you need in your life.
Absolutely. It's interesting. You mentioned the validation. I was having this conversation the other day, and there's actually a video you talk about how you kind of created this the urge to live a simple life, and we'll probably get to that later. But the validation, when we look at our friends, when we look at our neighbors or the Joneses, we're looking for validation in the wrong place. Like we first have to validate ourselves. Like that internal validation, that is what matters. And if we don't have that, it's never going to be enough from anywhere else. But I'll tell you what, though, I still have I've got the 5S, which I think came out after the 6. So you're still like you're still more minimalist than me.
Wait,
when
why
it
would
comes
the
to
5S come out after the 6?
I don't know, but I'm pretty sure it did. But anyway, I was using that 5S, and they saw me use it. They're like, "Oh, I love that you have that old iPhone." So if you hold on to it long enough, it actually becomes in vogue. Vintage, right?
The thing that everyone seeks after. And I think the other thing to add to that is we you talked about validation, and there's a piece of my content I talk about the reality check that simple living and decluttering gives us. And there's a question that I always pose. I say, who would you be if you had nothing but yourself in the mirror in front of you? So if you had none of the excessive clutter or the things or the newest phone or the shoes, the clothes, just you in the mirror, who would you be? And if you can't answer that question, then you're using those things to define yourself.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what you buy.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what vacation you go on. Yeah, if you can't look at yourself in the mirror, then why does it matter? Yeah,
right. And I mean, I still get roasted all the time for our documentary Minimalism. If you see my apartment in there, I owned next to nothing at the time. Now I was a single guy at the time, and when we filmed that, and so things were a little bit different. I have a family now, and that requires different things as our life changes. And what I realized even now, it's like during the pandemic, they're like, I bet those minimalist guys, they're really regretting getting rid of all their stuff. And it's like, oh yeah, I really miss the broken waffle iron, right?
And the old bowling trophies. I didn't even know you bowled.
Yeah, me either. I bought the bowling trophies from Goodwill. And so like, I don't, what I realized there is like, oh, like what they're saying is they would miss the things. And if so, that's fine. I'm not here proselytizing. I don't want you to get rid of something. If you're completely contented by the status quo, then of course, don't deprive yourself of things, but maybe you can temporarily remove some things from your life for that short period of time and realize like, oh, maybe the things I thought were adding value to my life are actually getting in the way of the things that will add value to my life. Chris, I'm going to send you a copy of our free ebook. It's called The Minimalist Rulebook, 16 Rules for Living with Less. And one of those rules is the don't upgrade rule. And we talk about sometimes if you do have to upgrade, there are 3 ways you can sort of go without, you can repair it, or you replace it. And so we talk about that don't upgrade rule. There are also some other rules in there that will really apply to you. The 30-30 rule, the 20-20 rule, the 90-90 rule, and a bunch of others. That's free over at theminimalists.com/rulebook. I hope you enjoy that, Chris.
Can you men think of anything that you've upgraded that you were like, I'm so glad I upgraded this? Because I'm like really trying to find that exception.
It depends. So let's talk about time frames real quick. So I think in the moment, usually the answer to that is yes. Like if you go, if I were to go to the Apple store right now and they give me the iPhone 13 or whatever the new thing is, in the moment I'm going to be like, yes.
That new box, there's something about that new box.
Yeah.
Taking off the shrink wrap, like. Yeah.
Right. But that's the dopamine speaking.
Right.
But as soon as I walk out, it instantly begins to diminish. And a day later, it might still be there, but it has been fleeting for an entire 24 hours. A month, 2 months, 6 months later, it's like, oh, I don't even care about this, right? Yeah. And then 2 years later, it's like, oh, this stupid old phone. And so I think it really depends on the time frame you're talking about. Usually, I think that sort of consumer high does not last far past the checkout line. Yeah. You could tweet that podcast, Sean. We got a question here from Eric in Seattle, Washington.
I kind of find it surprising that the digital environment is treated as a bit of a panacea junk drawer that you can scan anything and toss it into the cloud. But I feel like it creates a lot of mental baggage for me to just know it's out there, and wondered if you had any tips, tricks, practices, best practices on how to appropriately manage the bloating space of digital content in our digital world.
So, Ron, you talk about digital minimalism, and I do think this is something that a lot of people are troubled with, especially when they start dealing with the stuff. I think we're most troubled by the physical things because they take up space, they take up money, they take up time and attention. But as we start clearing that physical clutter, we realize that is a physical manifestation of other things that are going on in our life. So it could be mental clutter, spiritual clutter, but it's also digital clutter. Mm-hmm. And so you've tackled digital clutter. Yes. What do you talk to people about?
I think to answer his question of why we tend to have so much of the digital things saved to the cloud is because of how easy it is to do it. It's easy to hit save, easy to hit upload. Mm-hmm. And when something's easy, we don't think about doing it. It becomes second nature. You just hit the button and now it's gone. Yeah. And then because it's not physical, it's not sitting in front of you, it's not tangible, you can't touch it, you can't see it, then you forget about it. Mm-hmm. So I think we have to first take a step back and analyze ourselves and figure out why we tend to do things so easily. And then two, does any of those digital things, whether it's images, songs, whatever it is, do they also have an emotional attachment to us of some sort? Because it could be old family members, it could be mom, dad, grandparents. And because the cloud is easy to save to, we just throw it there. Oh, I know I still have it, but I forget that it's there. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the biggest piece that we have to overcome is how easy it is to do it, and then remembering that it's still there.
Yeah. I to me, just personally, I don't think digital clutter is as troublesome as physical clutter. And here's why. If you are able to put together, I think it's more troubling for most people because, as you said, they make it easy, but they don't necessarily make it simple. Right. And so it's just like, I'll scan everything, I'll just throw it in the cloud somewhere. And then it's like, you have this orgy of content that is like, I don't even know what's out there anymore. I've scanned it, I've uploaded, I've saved, I've downloaded, and just put it in the folder. And you open the folder and it's just chaos, right? Well, that's easy, but it's not simple. Simple would be curating that. And so what I do is every file that I save, I name it appropriately. So I'll give you an example. With photos, Ryan and I have just been going through a bunch of childhood photos because of our next film. We talk a little bit about the time that we met in the 5th grade. We were literally the two fattest kids in the 5th grade, and we've actually found some pictures. And I think that kid would totally kick my butt today. The 5th grade version of myself. He was certainly bigger than me.
Yeah. Well, that mullet was it's intimidating.
Yeah. I totally had a mullet. Yeah. Oh, it's so sad. Anyway, so stay tuned to that. Our next Netflix film will have incriminating evidence of both of us.
Yeah. No, I like what you're talking about though, about having a system with it.
Right. And so the system I have is a simple system. It does, you don't have to overly complicate this thing, but whoever's in the photo and the year. So if it was Josh, Ryan, and Sean in 2019, that's what the photo will say. It'll also often have a place that we were at too. So it's like Josh, mom, pool, 1984 or whatever. Yeah. And so it's just enough so I have enough information that I can search for those things. And then for me, if I digitize something, that is actually a way for me to let go as long as I have organized it appropriately. Mm-hmm. Now, just organizing for the sake of organizing is troubling. You've talked about this. But if we organize things carefully if we do so with intention, what that does is it gives me permission to have that out there, because you're never going to, the same way you're never going to reach the end of the internet. I wouldn't be worried about all the stuff you have in the cloud the same way I'm not worried about like, oh my God, I'm never going to finish reading Wikipedia. Well, no, duh. Of course you're not. That's not the intention, but it's there if you ever need to access it.
Yeah. I like how he likens the digital world to a junk drawer. Because if we treat it like that, then of course it's going to stress you out. And you know, Josh, what you're talking about is a very simple approach to our digital lives, but simple is not easy.
Yep.
And so having this, especially if you have a junk drawer right now of all this digital assets, whatever you want to call them, it's going to take some time to filter through those. I mean, it might take you a day or a week or a month, but you know, if you are experiencing this mental distress over your cloud, the stuff you have in there, then you've got to come up with a plan to simplify that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think to add to that too is also understanding that process is going to take time.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen overnight. And I think we get so overwhelmed because we want the clutter to be gone now.
Right now.
Right now. So he's
That's
looking at
our
the cloud
culture.
and he feels overwhelmed by the cloud because he's like, I want to delete this, I want to organize it, but I want it done now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to take time to go through those thousands of photos or songs or videos or whatever it is. So you have to be gentle with yourself. That's going to take time to go through those things. But like you said, find a system of organization that works for you and the things that you want to keep.
100%. I mean, think about how much time it takes to collect all those photos and songs. I mean, it
didn't happen overnight.
Right. Exactly.
So the last thing that I'll talk about here is, you know, what's fascinating to me is, yes, we worry about these things. We want to hold on to everything. And so often we digitize it. I digitize it for the opposite reason. As I said a moment ago, I digitize so I can let go. No longer do I have to have 2,000 CDs. I have functionally infinite music in my pocket.
You mean 2,000 CDs and cassettes?
Yeah. and alphabetized.
Yeah. So in high school, Josh was like, he was OCD in high school just like he is now.
Yes.
But every time he would buy an album, he would get it on cassette and on CD.
Yeah. I literally spent all the money from the restaurant I worked at just to buy cassettes and CDs. Yeah, it was pretty terrible.
Yeah, because like your car stereo played cassettes.
Yeah.
But then your
Like, I really need the new Silk the Shocker album. On cassette. All right. But I digitize things so I can let go. And what I mean by that is you also have to realize that if all of it were to go away, I think that's the ultimate minimalism, is realizing that I'm okay if all of it were to be deleted.
I love that question. Like, what if it all spontaneously combusted?
Yeah.
What would you do right now?
Yep.
And like your feeling to that answer really lets you know how important those things are to you. Like, I'll tell you, this documentary we're doing, like Matt's looking for some photos, and I don't have a ton of stuff from high school. In fact, he sent me a text a couple days ago, and he's like, hey man, I need a picture from when you're a fat little fifth grader. I found one. My dad had some of them, but his house burnt down last year. And I was a little let down. I'm like, oh man, I wish I could give him more of a variety of pictures to choose from for the documentary. But you know, you don't need childhood photos for this documentary to be great. I mean, it will add value. Like I'm certain of that, to show people what Josh and I look like in the fifth grade. But ultimately, I'm not that upset about it.
And just because something adds value doesn't mean you won't be okay without it. And I think that's what ultimately we need to realize is like if all of these things that are digitized, they should add value. They should make my life better in some way. But I should also be okay if our website was deleted, if our entire podcast archive was deleted. I would be upset about that in the moment, but I would also be able to step back and not be traumatized by it. And I think that ability to let go actually makes the digitizing a lot better for us. It makes it so that we can let go in a way. Well, Eric, I'm going to send you a couple things here. Let me give you a copy of our book, Essential. It's an essay collection. Here, I'll hold it up for the YouTube folks. It's 150 essays about living intentionally. There are 12 different areas of intentional living, and one of those has to do with our technology. So there's an entire chapter in here about technology. If you like our podcast, you'll really like the audio book version of Essential. It's over 6 hours long. Or if you want the book or the ebook version, we're happy to send those to you as well. And also, since you're in Seattle, we're headed out on tour pretty soon. And we're coming to Seattle and a bunch of other cities. theminimalists.com/tour for anyone who is interested. Even if we're not coming to a city near you, put in your email address there. We'll never send you spam, but we will let you know when we're coming to a city near you. But Eric, we're going to send you a couple of tour tickets as well to that event. We're going to do a live podcast. We'll have a special guest, maybe even a musical guest, etc. Hope you enjoy that tour stop. Ryan, what time is it?
You know what time is it? You know what time it is? You know what time is it? It's time for our lightning round where we answer your text messages. Text your questions and comments to 937-202-4654.
Yes, indeed. Those texts go to both of our phones, and we personally respond to as many as we can. Now, Ron, during the lightning round, this is where Ryan and I and our guests, we do our best to answer questions with a short, shareable, less than 140-character response. Okay. Mine today is actually about 280 characters.
I was looking at that. I'm like, you took advantage of the new Twitter rules.
Yeah, that's right. Really, we ramble on a bit until we find something that is pithy enough for Sean to put in the show notes so people can copy and share our pithy answers on social media. So we got a question here from Mahmood.
As a minimalist, is there any area in life where you allow for more rather than less?
Now, Ron, I'm going to give this to you. I'm just going to tee it up with my pithy answer, and you tell me what you think. This is an excerpt from, I believe, it's somewhere, one of our essays. Minimalists don't focus on having less. They focus on making room for more. More time, more passion, more creativity, more experiences, more contribution, more contentment, more freedom. Clearing the clutter creates room for the intangibles that make life more rewarding. And so I really think minimalism is in many ways about more, right? We often think of as this vector for less, and that's true, but it's what are we going to fill our life with after that, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think minimalism is not living without, it's living with everything you need. And I think when we step back and
tweet that podcast, Sean.
Yeah, that's great.
When we step back and ignore the less or more statements in this and look at the word enough, then it becomes about us. So what is enough for you? It's not about how much do I consume of this or how less do I consume of that. Is how much do I consume that becomes enough for me. So I think if he ignores his question of what do you get more of in life, I think, and just look at what would be enough for me in my situation in my life, then I think he's going to find the answer he's looking for. So for me, I don't get more of anything. I just get enough of everything I want. Or
and
everything
that changes
I need.
over time, right? Yep. So as your preferences change, maybe your interests change, your hobbies change, your desires change, even our impulses will change. And so we become different people over time. Not radically different necessarily, but 10 years from now, you're going to be different from how you are today. And so identifying what is enough today could be too much tomorrow. Yep. So we have to be willing to let go a day from now, a week from now, a month from now, a year from now. Yep. And I think that's why it's this sort of continual process. You don't get there to where, all right, I've got enough, and now life is perpetually perfect. Yep. It doesn't work that way.
And I think another thing I want to say is, to add to that, I kind of look at decluttering instead of approaching it from a perspective of, okay, I'm going to declutter today, and then wait a week, then I'm going to have another massive declutter a week from now. I kind of look at it from the perspective of decluttering as I live. So anytime I come across an object or a thought or a digital thing that I no longer need or find value in, I deal with it in that moment. So if it's a thought, I figure, okay, why am I having this negative thought or this positive thought, and how can I approach it, or how can I get rid of it? Yeah. If I come across a shirt or some jeans that I no longer wear, it goes right into a basket by our front door, and then it goes to Goodwill at the end of the week. So I think if you look at it from a perspective of decluttering as you live, and the other thing I want to say is, when you think about the idea of more, I always say in my content that, different phases in life require different things and necessities. So just like you said, things are going to change. It's always going to be fluid. And so you have to be able to change with life. And, I'm thinking through some of the pieces that I say in my content. I always try to entwine poetry somehow. And I say that change is going to happen regardless if you're ready to it or not. It just depends on how you move with it, determines how it's going to happen in your life. Yeah. So if you're rigid in your life, change is going to happen no matter around you. So then you're going to feel the effects of that. Yeah. But if you're fluid with it, and when change happens, then you're move and bend with it and adapt as you're supposed to.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest mistakes I've seen people make with minimalism is they look at it as a destination. Yep. We get questions a lot where we're like, oh, I've got rid of everything. Now what?
And now I'm not happy.
Right,
Like,
now I'm not happy. Like, now what? It's like...
That's the same thing as I bought the thing. Why am I not happy?
Yep.
Yeah.
Thinking the accomplishment, the task, the completion, and I get it. Especially people like me. I'm a bit of a completist by nature, but also realizing that like that destination is not going to make you happy. When I write a book, it's not the publication that makes me happy. It's the joy of the process. Ryan and I have spent the last 2.5 years on this next book that we're working on called Love People Use Things. And you have to remember to stop and enjoy that, because when the book comes out, it's great that people get value from it, but the real joy comes from the actual creation of the thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And I like what you said, how people look at minimalism as the end thing. And I like to say that minimalism is a tool, not the end result.
Yeah.
So you think about life, you think about building a house, you have to lay the foundation first. And the foundation comes from our emotions and our mindset, so dealing with those things. And then when you add minimalism to the mix, it's just a tool to help you build your life. It's not the end goal. So that's why it looks different for everyone.
Yeah.
So your tool could be a hammer, your tool could be a chainsaw, mine could be a screwdriver. Just depends on how we make those tweaks in our life using the tool of minimalism.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think whenever you give up something, you're gaining something else.
Yep.
I mean, even I think of like a monk who gives up everything, right? Their hair. They give up all their possessions. Like, they're gaining silence.
Right.
They're gaining time to use however they want, meditate, whatever it is. So it's when you're getting rid of things, when you're getting rid of the excess, you're gaining more in some other way. My pithy answer is this, y'all. More freedom is more empowering than more stuff. There's my more answer.
Yeah. Yeah, it's finding that right more, because also what you said a moment ago, Ryan, is true. When you give up something, you get something, but when you get something, purchase something, you often give up something. You give up a piece of your freedom.
Yeah.
And so it's like, hey, is this cup of coffee worth $2 of my freedom? Is this Toyota Corolla brand new worth $30,000 of my freedom? Like, how many hours do I have to work in order to buy the thing that takes me to work?
Yeah.
It all of a sudden, when you start thinking about it in terms of not currency, but a different kind of currency, what am I actually giving up to get this thing? And sometimes the answer is going to be yes, this is worth my $2 of freedom, or $10 or $100 or whatever. But making that decision intentionally, as opposed to, well, I guess it's $5 and I've got $5. That's not the most deliberate use of your money.
Yep.
All right, well, we got a whole bunch more to talk about. I do want to talk to you, Ron, about some specific things we can do with respect to decluttering. We're going to get into that. We've got some listener tips as well today, and our added value segment. But first, it looks like we've got a bunch more surprise questions this week, like, how do you practice digital decluttering? So we're going to get specific on some of the things that you do, Ron, in terms of digital decluttering. Also, how can we make meaningful purchases based on style and quality? Is there any stuff you found you truly need but wish you didn't need? Is there a Marie Kondo method for social media? We'll talk about that. Also, the only thing I overindulge in is books. Please help me. That's a question that someone had here, or a statement, I suppose, a cry for help. Also, 15 ways to simplify your life, plus a million more questions about minimalism for Ronald L. Banks. And if you want to hear all that, check out our Maximal episode this week on the Minimalist Private Podcast. It's a completely separate podcast, and it's just $2, and it's the most honest way for the minimalist to earn an income, because, we don't believe in advertisements. We think advertisements suck. So we make money if and only if you find value in what we create and support what we create. Head on over to theminimalists.com/support to subscribe and get a personal link so that our private podcast plays in your favorite podcast app. Ryan, what else you got for us this week?
Here are some voicemail comments and tips from our listeners. Check them out.
Hi, this is Emily McDermott from Fairfax, Virginia, and this is in response to episode 245, where Ryan was mentioning that he was having difficulty donating to Goodwill. I've had a lot of success with buying nothing groups and have been able to get rid of clothes that way to neighbors of mine that can use it, and that might be a good option while the donation centers are closed.
Hi, my name is Michelle, and I'm calling to answer a question asked on episode 97, Side Hustle, from Jean from Sacramento. She mentioned moving into a tiny house and the accoutrements that come along with the life-sustaining hobby of cooking. She asked, when you cook, how long does it take you and what do you make? In our family, my husband and I range from cooking for 20 minutes to hours and even days for some of the recipes. But I really wanted to call because my husband and I dream of having a tiny house and someday with half of it being the kitchen. So I had several recommendations for Jean. First was kitchen supplies. Alton Brown's book, Gear for Your Kitchen, was really helpful for me. He's very critical of what he refers to as unitaskers or tools that only do one job. Second is a subscription to America's Test Kitchen online. If you're shopping for stuff, they have really helpful reviews, and they've tested everything very thoroughly. Then for minimalist cooking, the Brothers Green Eats on YouTube has brief, well-made videos, and in the early episodes, they're cooking in a small apartment kitchen, so that may be helpful to you. Lastly, I would advise considering how everything will work together. For example, my husband has been pining after an induction cooktop. If we were getting one for a tiny house, I would keep our pressure cooker and eliminate our rice cooker. Maybe invest in a pan that would nest in the pressure cooker for storage. If we were instead investing in an Instapot or something similar, then I'd have a really different plan. I maybe want a single gas burner in addition. So I hope for you everything is going well and you're able to make decisions that help you downsize while keeping your choices on things that you value.
All right, y'all. Thanks again to Ronald L. Banks for joining us today. Check out his YouTube channel. We're going to put a link to that in the show notes. Ron, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much.
Time.
We got an added value segment today, and so stick around for this. I want to talk to you about this. Our friend Derek Sivers, who we did a live event with, I think it was his first interview in like 4 years or something.
Yeah.
We did a live event with him back in 2017. You can actually find it. I think it's episode 83. No, that's not right. 125. Dunbar's number is real. After about 150 episodes, I started losing track of all of them. I used to have them all memorized.
You're malfunctioning. I need to upgrade your computer chip.
Yes, thank you. We'll put a link to his the episode we did with him, the live event we did, in the show notes. But that's not what my added value is today. He has a new book out. It's called Hell Yeah or No.
It might be his best advice ever.
Right, and so it's this essay collection. He's been working on 3 books concurrently over the last, 5 or 6 years.
I feel like only Sivers could do that.
Yeah, well, he works like
him and maybe Seth Godin.
Right. Well, even Seth wouldn't do what Sivers does. Sivers is he works like 12, 15 hours a day, and I love his writing process. His writing process is beautiful. So what he does is he writes an outline, and then he expands on the outline and gets many, many pages of the idea down. And he takes those pages and he says, how would I describe this in a new outline? And then he just publishes the outline and doesn't, he just throws everything else away. I mean, it's real minimalism. Anyway, his book, and it's only available on his website, sivers.org. We'll put a link to it in the show notes.
Oh, good for him.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
And I think if you buy it, you get the. I just bought a case of them, so you can buy the physical version. He also has the ebook and the audiobook that sort of come together, and. I mean, what a great advice. So his advice of hell yeah or no has to do with making decisions. And so he says no to everything unless it's an absolute hell yeah. I'm definitely going to do this thing. I have to do this thing. Yeah. I'm excited about doing this thing. He also has contrary advice to that as well, when you should say yes to everything. And so he talks about that as well. So enjoy that book. That's our added value for this week. Hell yeah or no, the new book by Derek Sivers. And for right here, right now, real quick, here's one thing that's going on in the life of the Minimalists. We now have 2 YouTube channels. Well, by the time this comes out.
Because we're minimalists.
You can subscribe to both or don't. I don't really care. But if you would, if you're interested, we're moving the full episodes of the podcast. We spoke with some experts and a bunch of different people who told us to do this, and so it makes sense. It's not like we're creating more. It's just, I guess YouTube's algorithms have been punishing us, because what we'll do is we'll put these half-hour, 45 or hour-long podcasts on our main channel, and then we have short videos on there as well, and so it confuses people.
It's just a better experience for folks.
Yeah, and so if you would subscribe to both of those, that'd be great. The current one is we're going to keep putting out short videos on there, so quickie episodes, living room conversations, all the short podcasts and short things that we do, YouTube videos that we do. Those will still be at youtube.com/theminimalist, and then we have this new channel by the time this episode comes out, just for the Minimalists podcast. We'll put a link to that in the show notes if you check it out. Both of those are still advertisement free. We don't monetize either one of those. We just want to add value to your life with YouTube. You can follow The Minimalists on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at The Minimalists. Ron, you are at I'm Ron Banks on Twitter. Where do you on Instagram?
At I'm Ron Banks.
Okay.
At I'm Ron Banks across all platforms.
There we go.
All platforms.
Well, you can follow Ron there on all those platforms. I'm Ron Banks. Follow The Minimalists, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at The Minimalists. Come to one of our live podcast shows. Visit theminimalists.com/tour to find a city near you. If you have a question, comment, or minimalism tip for our podcast, email a voice memo to podcast@theminimalists.com. You can comment on this episode at youtube.com/theminimalists podcast. I don't know. We don't have the URL yet. Anyway, youtube.com/theminimalists. You'll find it there somewhere. And if you want our show notes in your inbox, sign up for our email list over at theminimalists.com. You'll also receive our simple Sunday emails. And if you leave here today with just one message, we hope it's this: love people and use things, because the opposite never works. Thanks for listening, y'all.
We'll see you next time.
Every little thing you think that you need, every little thing you think that you need, every little thing that's just feeding your greed. Oh, I bet that you'd be fine without it.